Okay, guys, in this video, we are going to take a look at each basic toolkit function and determine their domain and range. The first one is just a constant. So this is f of x equals -1. It's always -1. This is a horizontal line at y equals -1. So we do not need to change anything here. This is a line. And just take any 2 points that have the y coordinate equal -1. So for example, -4, -1, and let's say 2, -1. Okay, now to determine the domain and range, let's focus on this. So let's take a look closer. What is the domain? So the domain would be basically we're going from the left to the right. So it's a horizontal extent of the graph. So really we are going all the way to the left to all the way to the right. So looks like the domain is going to be -infinity to infinity. Now the range is the vertical extent of the graph. So here we're going to have, for example, well, we're going to have not much because really it just stays at -1 and that's it. So the range looks like it's just one value, -1. Okay. So let's take a look. So again, for the domain, we're going to say that's -infinity to infinity. For the range, it's just -1. So how do we express that in interval notation? So if you go to interval, this is just going to be just one y value, which is -1. So it's going to go from -1 to -1. It's just 1 point. Okay. Now, for y equals x, or f of x equals x, so we still staying in the line tool, and we're going to go from 0, 0 to 1, 1 for our line. Now, what is going to be the domain? So let's focus on that. So the domain here is going to be, really, we're going from all the way to the left to all the way to the right. So this is just going to be all the way from here to here. So that's the domain. Okay, what about the range? Well, for the range, we're going to go all the way from the bottom to all the way to the top. So really, we do not seem to have any restrictions here. So this is going to be -infinity to infinity, and same thing for the range, -infinity to infinity. Okay, for x squared, this is the parabola. So parabola, we do have to switch to this one, and the vertex of x squared is located at 0, 0, and then we need one more point, and that would be 1, 1. Now let's look at and focus on what about the domain and the range. So for the domain, you're thinking about, okay, so does it look like there's any restriction? What you need to understand is that the graph keeps going, right? Even though you can't see it because it's outside of the grid, but it's really not going to have any restrictions. It's going to go all the way from the left to all the way from the right. So that's going to be the domain, all real numbers. However, the range is not all real numbers because the graph starts right here. So it's really going to start over here and go all the way up, right? But it's not -infinity to infinity. It starts at 0. Okay, so let's summarize that. So for the domain, no restriction. For the range, we're going to start at 0. 0 will be included because that's the vertex. It does reach the vertex. And then we're going all the way to infinity. Okay, for absolute value of x, this is your favorite V shape, right? So this one right here, and it starts at 0, 0, it also goes through 1, 1. Now let's look at the domain and range. Now this is going to be very similar to what we looked at for the x squared, because let's see. So looks like the domain is really all real numbers, right? There is no restriction. It just keeps going. Now, what about the range? Well, for the ranges, similarly, it's not there for negative values. It's only going to start at 0 and then go all the way up, all the way. Okay, so let's see, that's going to be the same. So -infinity to infinity, and then the range starts at 0, goes to +infinity. Remember not to include infinity. Finally, the square root of x. So square root of x is this guy right here. We're going to start at, start at 0, 0, and also connect it with 1, 1. Now let's focus on this guy. What is going to be the domain? So the domain, it's not going to be all real numbers because it doesn't exist for negative x values. So it only starts right here and then goes all the way forever. So it's going to be 0 to +infinity. What about the range? Well, the range is going to also not going to be everywhere. It's going to start at 0. And because the graph keeps going forever, it's not really going to stop. So that's going to be the range. All right, so let's summarize that. So for the domain, we're going to start at 0, go to infinity. And for the range, it's going to be the same thing. We start at 0 and go to infinity. Okay, let's check that out. All right.